The ballroom shimmered like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers dripping light, polished marble floors reflecting the swirl of elegant gowns and tailored tuxedos, soft jazz music floating in the air like a gentle breeze. Waiters moved silently through the crowd, balancing trays of champagne flutes that sparkled under the golden glow. It was one of those nights where everything looked perfect, expensive, and just a little bit distant, like a painting you could admire but never quite step into. Near the grand staircase, an older woman stood perfectly still, watching it all with quiet eyes. She wore a simple but impeccably cut navy dress, pearls at her throat, silver hair swept into a neat bun. To most guests, she was just another wealthy donor, someone to smile at politely, maybe snap a quick photo with for social media. But those who knew her understood. This woman didn't need the spotlight. She owned half the city's skyline, had funded hospitals, universities, and art museums across 3 continents. Yet tonight, none of that seemed to matter. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but the deep, quiet kind that settles in your bones after years of carrying something heavy you never talk about. She took a slow sip of champagne, her gaze drifting absently over the crowd. Laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of polite conversation, it all blurred together. She'd attended hundreds of these events. Once she'd loved them. Now they just reminded her of how alone she really was. Her husband had been gone for over 15 years. Her only child, her brilliant, fiery daughter, had died young, too young, in a car crash nearly 2 decades ago. And the one person who might have tied her to the future, well, that thread had snapped long before she even realized it existed. She sighed softly and turned toward the balcony doors, thinking maybe a breath of cool night air would help clear her head. That's when she saw her. Across the room, near the dessert table, stood a young woman, barely out of her teens, dressed in a simple black uniform with a small event volunteer badge pinned to her chest. She wasn't a guest. She was staff. But there was something about the way she held herself, calm, observant, kind, that made the older woman pause. And then she saw it. Around the girl's neck, resting just above her collarbone, was a small gold locket. It wasn't flashy. In fact, it looked worn, the metal slightly dulled with age. But the shape, oval, with a delicate floral engraving on the front, was unmistakable. The older woman's heart stopped. She hadn't seen that locket in over 20 years. Not since the last time she'd held it in her own hands, the day she'd given it to her daughter as a 16th birthday gift. She remembered the moment vividly, the soft weight of it in her palm, the way her daughter's eyes had lit up. The tiny initials AW she'd had engraved on the back. Amelia Winthrop. Amelia. Just thinking the name sent a sharp ache through her chest. She'd kept that locket close for years after Amelia's death, clutching it like a lifeline in the darkest nights. But one day it was gone. She'd searched the house, called security, even hired a private investigator. Nothing. She'd assumed it was stolen. Or lost forever. And now here it was, on the neck of a stranger. Her hands began to tremble. The champagne flute felt suddenly heavy. She set it down on a nearby table, her breath coming faster now. She wanted to look away, to tell herself it was just a coincidence. Lockets like that weren't that rare after all. But something deep inside her, something older than logic, whispered, "No, that's it. That's hers." She took a step forward, then another, moving slowly through the crowd like someone walking through deep water. Her pulse roared in her ears, drowning out the music, the chatter, everything. All she could see was that locket, and the young woman who wore it. The girl hadn't noticed her yet. She was carefully arranging petit fours on a silver tray, her movements gentle, practiced. She had warm brown skin, high cheekbones, and eyes that held a quiet strength. There was a calmness about her, a groundedness that felt out of place in this sea of glitter and pretense. As the older woman drew closer, the girl finally looked up. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the girl offered a small, polite smile, the kind you give to strangers at work. "Good evening, ma'am. Can I help you with something?" The older woman opened her mouth, but no words came out. She tried again. That necklace," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you get it?" The girl's hand instinctively went to the locket, fingers brushing the cool metal. "Oh, this? It was my mom's," she said softly. "She gave it to me when I was little. Said it was special." Your mother?" the older woman repeated, her voice cracking. "Yeah. My adoptive mom," the girl clarified gently. sensing something in the woman's tone. She found it at a thrift store in Atlanta years ago. Loved it right away. When she passed, she left it to me. Said it felt like it was meant for me. Atlanta. The word hit like a punch to the chest. Amelia had run away to Atlanta after their final. Terrible argument. The one about the pregnancy, about the future, about everything. She'd cut off all contact. By the time the older woman tracked her down, it was too late. Amelia was gone. And the baby. The baby had been placed in foster care. She'd spent years searching, hiring people, following every lead, but the trail had gone cold. She'd eventually accepted that her granddaughter, the only living piece of Amelia left, was lost to her forever. Now, standing in front of this young woman, she felt the past rushing back like a tide. The locket, Atlanta. The eyes, so much like Amelia's, wide and thoughtful with that same slight tilt at the corners. Even the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. It was all her. Tears welled up, hot and sudden, blurring her vision. She tried to hold them back, to keep her composure. She was Eleanor Winthrop after all. She didn't cry in public, but it was no use. The dam had broken. "Oh, honey," the girl said, her voice full of concern now. She stepped out from behind the table, abandoning the petit fours. "Are you okay?" The older woman couldn't speak. She just shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. She reached out, not quite touching, her hand hovering near the locket as if afraid it might vanish if she got too close. The girl didn't flinch. Instead, she did something unexpected. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around the older woman in a gentle, steady hug. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't staged. It was just human, warm, real. And in that embrace, something shifted. The older woman, Eleanor, buried her face in the girl's shoulder, her body shaking with silent sobs. All those years of grief, guilt, and unanswered questions poured out in that moment. She hadn't held her daughter in 20 years. She hadn't held her granddaughter, ever. But now, somehow, she was holding her. Around them, the gala continued, people laughing, music playing, glasses clinking. But for these two, time seemed to stop. The noise faded. The lights dimmed. There was only this, the weight of a locket, the warmth of an embrace, and the quiet, trembling hope that maybe, just maybe, what was lost could still be found. The girl held her tightly, not saying a word, just letting her cry. She didn't know why this elegant stranger was falling apart over a simple piece of jewelry, but something in her gut told her it mattered, deeply. When Eleanor finally pulled back, her face was wet, her makeup smudged, her hair slightly undone. She looked vulnerable in a way no one in that room had ever seen her, but she also looked lighter. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raw. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's okay," the girl said softly. "Really?" Eleanor took a shaky breath. Would you mind if we talked? Just for a few minutes? Somewhere quiet?" The girl hesitated for only a second. She glanced at her supervisor, who gave a small nod. Clearly, no one was going to say no to Eleanor Winthrop. "Sure," she said. "There's a lounge just down the hall." They walked side by side, not touching but close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. Eleanor kept her eyes on the locket as if afraid to look away and break the spell. In the quiet lounge, away from the noise and lights, they sat on a plush velvet sofa. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, casting soft silver patterns on the floor. Eleanor took a deep breath. "My name is Eleanor," she said finally. "I'm Maya," the girl replied. "Maya," Eleanor repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It felt right, strong, beautiful. That locket, it belonged to my daughter. Her name was Amelia. Maya's eyes widened slightly. You're her mother?" Eleanor nodded, tears welling up again. "She gave it away before she passed. I never thought I'd see it again." She paused, then added gently, "She was pregnant when she died. She had a baby girl." Maya went very still. Her hand went to the locket again, fingers tracing the edge. "I looked for you," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "For years. But the system. It was hard. I thought I'd lost you forever." Maya didn't speak right away. She just stared at the older woman, really looked at her. At the lines around her eyes, the sorrow in her gaze, the way her hands trembled even now. And then slowly, she opened the locket. Inside on one side was a tiny, faded photo of a young woman with wild curls and a bright smile. Amelia. On the other side, a blank space. Waiting. Maya's voice was quiet when she finally spoke. My adoptive mom always said this locket felt like it was waiting for me to find my real story. Eleanor reached out, not for the locket, but for Maya's hand. And this time, Maya let her take it. Outside, the city glittered, unaware of the cue. She had miracle unfolding in that quiet room. But inside, two hearts separated by time, grief, and circumstance had finally found their way back to each other. And it all began with a simple gold locket. And a hug that said everything words never could. The lounge was quiet. Just the soft hum of the city outside and the distant echo of music from the ballroom. Moonlight spilled across the carpet, painting silver streaks on the floor. Eleanor still held Maya's hand, her grip gentle but firm, as if afraid she might vanish if she let go. Maya didn't pull away. She sat very still, her mind racing, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. She'd grown up knowing she was adopted. Her mom, the woman who raised her, had always been honest about it. "You were meant for me," she used to say, brushing Maya's hair before bed. Sometimes families find each other in the strangest ways. She never pushed for details about Maya's birth parents. "If you ever want to look," she'd said once, "I'll help you. But only when you're ready." Maya had thought about it, of course. Who wouldn't? But life got busy. School, part-time jobs, helping her mom with bills after her dad left. And then, 2 years ago, her mom got sick. Cancer moved fast. By the time Maya graduated high school, her mom was gone. All she had left was the locket, a few photo albums, and a heart full of love and questions. Now, sitting across from this elegant woman with tired eyes and trembling hands, those questions felt suddenly urgent. "You said, your daughter was pregnant?" Maya asked, her voice low. Eleanor nodded, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Yes, Amelia, my daughter, she was only 19. We didn't see eye to eye back then. She wanted to keep the baby. I was scared for her. I thought she was too young, that she'd throw her life away. We argued, terribly," her voice cracked. She packed a bag and left. Said she never wanted to see me again. Maya swallowed. "And you never heard from her after that?" "Not directly," Eleanor said. "I tried. I called, wrote letters, even hired someone to find her. But she'd changed her number, moved around. The last I heard, she was in Atlanta. Then there was an accident. A rainy night. She lost control of her car." Eleanor looked down, her shoulders shaking slightly. "By the time I got there, she was gone." "And the baby?" "They told me the baby survived. A little girl. But she'd been taken into foster care. I begged the social workers, offered to pay for anything, just let me see her, hold her. But there were rules. Privacy laws. And Amelia hadn't listed me as next of kin. She'd cut me out completely." Maya felt a lump rise in her throat. She thought of her own earliest memories. Foster homes that felt temporary. Adults who were kind but distant. The constant sense of not quite belonging. She'd been placed with her adoptive mom when she was 3. That's when things finally felt stable. Safe. "Did you keep looking?" she asked. "Every single day," Eleanor whispered. "For years. I followed every lead. I even went to Atlanta myself. Walked the streets where she lived, talked to neighbors. But no one knew anything. The system, it's like a wall. Especially when you're on the outside." She looked up at Maya, her eyes searching. "I thought I'd lost you forever. And then tonight, I saw that locket. I knew it was hers. I just knew." Maya opened the locket again. The photo inside was faded, but the smile was bright. Full of life, full of hope. She'd always wondered who that woman was. Now she knew. "She looks like you," Maya said softly. Eleanor let out a small, watery laugh. People used to say that. "You and Amelia could be twins," they'd say. Though she had more fire in her. She paused, then added, "You have her eyes. And that little crease between your eyebrows when you're thinking hard. She used to get that too." Maya instinctively touched her brow, surprised. No one had ever pointed that out before. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 20 years pressing down on them. It wasn't awkward, it was just heavy, like standing under a sky full of stars you never knew were there. Finally, Maya spoke again. "So, does this mean I'm your granddaughter?" Eleanor finished gently. "Yes, if you'll have me." Maya didn't answer right away. It wasn't that she didn't believe her. The locket, the story, the way this woman looked at her, it all felt true. But it was a lot to take in. One minute she was serving canapes at a fancy gala. The next she was sitting with her biological grandmother, a woman whose name she'd seen in newspapers and business magazines. "What do you want from me?" Maya asked, not unkindly, but honestly. Eleanor didn't flinch. "Nothing," she said firmly. "I don't want anything from you. Not your time, not your forgiveness, not even your name. I needed you to know that you existed, that you mattered. That someone out there loved your mother deeply and would have loved you just as much if she'd had the chance." Her voice broke on the last word. Maya felt tears prick her own eyes. She'd spent so much of her life feeling like a footnote in someone else's story, but this woman, this stranger who owned buildings and gave millions to charity, was looking at her like she was the most important person in the world. "I don't know what to say," Maya admitted. "You don't have to say anything," Eleanor replied. "Just let me sit here with you for a while." That's enough, and so they did. They talked a little more about small things at first. Maya told her about growing up in Atlanta, about her love for books, how she worked part-time at the library to help pay for community college. Eleanor listened intently, asking gentle questions, never interrupting, never making it about herself. In turn, Eleanor shared stories about Amelia, not the angry teenager who ran away, but the little girl who loved climbing trees, who wrote terrible poetry, who cried when she saw stray dogs. She wanted to be a teacher, Eleanor said with a soft smile. Said she wanted to help kids who felt lost. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Maya smiled back, surprised. She was studying to be a social worker. She'd never told anyone that tonight. As the night wore on, the gala outside began to wind down. Guests drifted toward the exits, laughing and saying goodbyes. But in the quiet lounge, time seemed to stretch and soften. Eventually, Maya glanced at her watch. "I should probably get back. My shift ends in 20 minutes. Eleanor's face fell just slightly. "Of course," she said quickly, trying to mask her disappointment. "I don't want to keep you." But Maya hesitated. "Or maybe we could talk more. Sometime not here. Somewhere normal." Eleanor's eyes lit up. "I'd like that very much." They exchanged numbers. Maya's old flip phone, Eleanor's sleek smartphone. It felt surreal, typing her digits into the phone of a billionaire. Before Maya left, Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. "This isn't for you," she said quickly, seeing Maya's wary look. "It's for the locket. The clasp is worn. I noticed it earlier. I have a jeweler who can fix it, gently, without damaging the engraving. Would you let me take it? Just for a day or two?" Maya looked down at the locket. The chain was frayed. She'd been meaning to get it fixed for months but never had the money. "Okay," she said slowly, "but I want to be there when it's done." "Of course," Eleanor agreed. "You can come to my home. Tomorrow if you're free." Maya nodded. Tomorrow. As she walked back to the ballroom, Maya felt like she was floating. Her feet touched the ground, but her mind was somewhere else. Somewhere between grief and wonder, between the past and a future she hadn't dared imagine. The next morning, Maya woke early. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the locket, the photo, the older woman's tear-streaked face. She made coffee, fed her cat, and stared out the window of her tiny apartment, wondering if last night had been real. By noon, she was standing outside a tall, quiet building on the Upper East Side. The doorman greeted her by name. Eleanor must have told him to expect her. The elevator ride up felt like a dream. When the doors opened, Eleanor was waiting in the hallway, dressed in soft slacks and a cashmere sweater, no makeup, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger, softer. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The apartment was beautiful, not flashy but warm. Bookshelves lined the walls, family photos everywhere, a piano in the corner. It didn't feel like the home of a billionaire. It felt like the home of someone who missed her family. They sat in the sunlit living room. The jeweler had already come and gone. The locket lay on the coffee table, gleaming, the chain repaired, the clasp secure. Eleanor handed it to Maya. "He said it's good for another 50 years. Maya fastened it around her neck again. It felt different now, lighter somehow, even though it was the same weight. They talked for hours, about nothing and everything. Eleanor showed her old photo albums. Amelia as a baby, as a teenager, at her high school graduation. Maya pointed out the same smile, the same way she tilted her head when listening. At one point, Eleanor got up and returned with a small wooden box. "I kept this for you," she said. "All these years, even when I didn't know if I'd ever give it to you." Inside was a baby blanket, soft, pale yellow, slightly frayed at the edges, and a tiny silver rattle. Maya picked it up, her fingers tracing the delicate design. "She bought these?" she asked. "She picked them out herself," Eleanor said, her voice thick, "right after she found out she was pregnant. She came home one day beaming and said, 'Mom, I'm going to be the best mom ever.'" Eleanor smiled through tears. "I didn't believe her then. I thought she was being naive. But looking at you, I think she would have been." Maya held the rattle close. For the first time, I didn't just feel like an orphan. She felt like someone who had been loved before she was even born. As the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, Eleanor asked gently, "Do you have questions? About her? About us?" Maya thought for a long moment. "Why did you stop looking?" she finally asked. Eleanor sighed. "I didn't stop. Not really. But after 10 years, hope gets heavy. I started to think maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe Amelia didn't want you to find me. Maybe I didn't deserve it." She looked at Maya. "But seeing you last night, it felt like the universe was giving me a second chance, and I don't want to waste it." Maya nodded slowly. She understood that feeling, the fear that you're not worthy of good things. Before she left, Eleanor walked her to the door. "Will you come back?" she asked, trying to sound casual but failing. Maya smiled. "Yeah, I think I will." And as she stepped into the elevator, locket warm against her skin, she realized something. She wasn't just carrying a piece of the past anymore. She was holding a bridge to a grandmother who'd been waiting, to a mother she'd never met, and to a future that suddenly felt full of possibility. Maya didn't sleep much that night. Not because she was scared or confused, though there was some of that, but because her mind kept circling back to the way Eleanor had looked at her. Not with pity, not with curiosity, but with something deeper. Recognition. Like she'd been waiting a lifetime to see Maya's face and finally could breathe again. The next morning, she sat on the edge of her bed, the repaired locket cool against her skin, and stared at her phone. She'd saved Eleanor's number under Eleanor W. Formal, distant, like she was still trying to keep things safe. But after yesterday, safe didn't feel right anymore. She changed it to just Eleanor. Simple, real. She thought about texting, just to say thanks or to ask how she was. But what do you say to someone who might be your grandmother after knowing them for 2 days? The words felt too big, too small, too loaded. Instead, she got dressed, fed her cat, and walked to the community college campus where she worked part-time in the student support office. Her supervisor, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been through foster care herself, took one look at Maya and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya almost laughed. "More like I found one." She didn't explain. Not yet. This felt too private, too fragile to share in a break room over stale coffee. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. "Would you like to join me for dinner tonight? No gala, no crowds, just us. My chef makes a mean vegetable stew." Maya smiled. She typed back, "Only if I can bring dessert." They agreed on 7. That evening, Maya stood outside the same elegant building, this time holding a small box of peach cobbler from her favorite bakery, the one her adoptive mom used to take her to every birthday. She rang the bell and Eleanor opened the door before the chime even finished. "You came," Eleanor said, relief softening her voice. "I said I would," Maya replied, stepping inside. Dinner was quiet at first, just the clink of spoons, the steam rising from the bowls, the low hum of classical music in the background. But it wasn't awkward. There was a comfort in the silence, like they were both giving each other space to just be. Halfway through the stew, Eleanor set her spoon down. "I've been thinking," she said carefully, "about what you asked me yesterday, why I stopped looking." Maya looked up. "I didn't want to say it before," Eleanor continued, "because I didn't want you to think I gave up on you. But the truth is, I was ashamed," Maya frowned. "Ashamed?" Eleanor nodded, her eyes fixed on her bowl. "After Amelia left, I told myself it was for her own good, that I was protecting her, but deep down I knew I'd pushed her away. I was controlling. I wanted her to live the life I planned for her, not the one she wanted. And when she got pregnant, I saw it as a disaster, not a miracle. She took a shaky breath. I failed her. And then I failed you too by not finding you sooner. Maya didn't say anything right away. She thought about her own adoptive mom, how she'd never once made Maya feel like a burden even when money was tight or the days were long. My mom, the one who raised me, she used to say that love isn't about getting it perfect. It's about showing up even when you're scared. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I wish I'd known that sooner. You're showing up now, Maya said gently. Eleanor reached across the table and covered Maya's hand with her own. Thank you for letting me. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Eleanor poured 2 cups of tea, and they sat by the window watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I've been wondering, Maya said slowly, what would have happened if you'd found me back then? Would you have taken me in? Eleanor didn't answer right away. She stirred her tea, her expression thoughtful. I'd like to say yes, but honestly, I don't know. I was so broken after Amelia died. I threw myself into work, into charity, into anything that would keep me from feeling the pain. I don't know if I would have been ready to be a grandmother. Not the kind you deserved, Maya nodded. That felt honest, and honesty she was learning was more valuable than pretty lies. But I'm ready now, Eleanor added, her voice firm. If you'll let me. Maya looked at her, really looked. She saw the lines of grief, yes, but also the quiet strength underneath. The woman who'd built an empire, who'd survived loss after loss and was still willing to open her heart again. I think I'd like that, Maya said. Over the next few days, they fell into a rhythm. Maya came by after her classes or shifts. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they just sat together, Eleanor reading the paper, Maya studying for her social work exam, the silence comfortable between them. One afternoon, while flipping through an old photo album, Maya pointed to a picture of Amelia holding a guitar. She played? She tried, Eleanor laughed. Badly, but she loved it. Said music helped her think, Maya grinned. I play piano. Not well, but it helps me too. Eleanor's eyes lit up. There's a piano in the music room. Haven't touched it since my husband passed. Would you? Maya followed her down the hall to a sunlit room with tall windows and a grand piano covered in a white cloth. She lifted the cover, ran her fingers over the keys, and played a simple melody she'd learned as a child. Something soft, something hopeful. Eleanor stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Later, as Maya was leaving, Eleanor handed her a key. For the building, she said. So you don't have to wait for the doorman. Maya hesitated. Eleanor, I don't want you to feel like you have to give me things. This isn't a thing, Eleanor said softly. It's an invitation. To come and go as you please. To know you always have a place here. Maya took the key. It felt heavy in her palm. Not because it was metal, but because it meant something. A week passed. Then 2. Maya started bringing her textbooks, studying at the dining table while Eleanor read nearby. They cooked together, Eleanor learning how to make Maya's favorite collard greens, Maya trying her hand at Eleanor's famous lemon cake. They laughed over burnt toast and spilled tea. They shared stories about school, about work, about dreams. One evening, Maya asked, "Did you ever remarry? After your husband?" Eleanor shook her head. No, he was my person. After he was gone, I didn't want to start over. And then Amelia died, and it felt like my whole world had ended. She paused. But lately, I feel like maybe it's not over. Maybe it's just beginning again. Maya understood. She'd felt the same way after her mom passed, like the story was finished. But now, sitting here with Eleanor, she realized stories don't end. They just change chapters. Then came the day Maya brought up something she'd been avoiding. I've been thinking about a DNA test, she said carefully, stirring her tea. Eleanor went still. Oh, I don't need it to believe you, Maya added quickly. I do, but I guess I want proof. For me. For my records. For peace of mind. Eleanor nodded slowly. Of course. Whatever you need. They ordered a kit online. When it arrived, they did it together in the kitchen, swabbing cheeks, sealing envelopes, mailing it off. It felt strange, turning something so emotional into a simple procedure, but it also felt right. While they waited for the results, Maya started opening up more about her childhood, the foster homes, the uncertainty, the loneliness. Eleanor listened without judgment, her eyes full of sorrow and love. "I'm so sorry you went through that alone," she said one night. "I wasn't alone," Maya replied. "My mom found me and now you have too." The test results came back 10 days later. Maya opened the email at Eleanor's apartment, her hands trembling. Eleanor sat beside her, silent, waiting. When Maya read the words, 99.9% probability of grandparent-grandchild relationship, she didn't cry. She just leaned her head on Eleanor's shoulder and whispered, "It's really you." Eleanor wrapped an arm around her. "It's really you too." That night something shifted. The last thread of doubt, however small, was gone. They weren't just two people connected by a locket or a story. They were family. Blood and bone and heart. A few days later, Eleanor asked if Maya would go with her to visit Amelia's grave. Maya agreed. They drove upstate to a quiet cemetery nestled among trees. The headstone was simple. Amelia Winthrop, beloved daughter, 1982 to 2003. Maya knelt and placed a single white rose at the base. Eleanor stood behind her, silent. After a long moment, Maya spoke. "I wish I could have known her." "So do I," Eleanor said softly. "But I'm glad you know me, and I'm glad she gave you life." Maya stood and turned to her. "She gave me you too." In a way, Eleanor pulled her into a hug, right there among the graves and the trees. No one else was around. Just them, the wind in the leaves, and the quiet presence of the woman who started it all. On the drive back, Maya asked, "Do you think she'd be proud of me?" Eleanor didn't hesitate. "I know she would. You're kind. You're strong. You care about people." "That's her. That's you," Maya smiled. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was living in the shadow of a mystery. She felt like she was walking in someone's light. Back in the city, life continued. Maya returned to her classes. Eleanor attended board meetings. But now their lives were woven together. Text messages in the morning, shared dinners, weekend walks in the park. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, Eleanor found a journal. "Amelia's," she said, holding it like something sacred. "I never read it. I was too afraid of what I'd find." Maya sat beside her on the dusty floor. "Do you want to read it now?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "Only if you're with me." They opened it together. The pages were filled with messy handwriting, doodles in the margins, poems about rain and freedom and love. And then near the end, an entry dated just weeks before the accident. "I'm scared. But I'm also happy. I'm having a girl. I can feel it. I named her Maya after the word for illusion in Sanskrit. Because life is full of illusions, but love isn't. Mom doesn't understand yet. But one day she will. And when she meets Maya, she'll see. She'll see that this wasn't a mistake. It was a gift." Maya covered her mouth with her hand. Her name, her real name, not chosen by chance, chosen with love. Eleanor was crying quietly. "She knew," she whispered. "She knew I'd find you." Maya hugged her tight. She believed in us. From that day on, the journal stayed on the coffee table, open, shared, alive, and slowly, quietly. Two broken hearts began to heal, not by forgetting the past, but by building something new from its pieces. A grandmother and a granddaughter, a second chance, a family reborn. Life didn't change overnight, but it did change slowly, steadily, like the tide coming in. Maya still woke up early to catch the bus to campus. She still studied late into the night, still worried about rent, still carried the weight of her past. But now there was something new, a place to land, a person who waited for her. Eleanor's apartment became more than just a grand address, it became home. Not in the flashy, overwhelming way Maya had once imagined wealth, but in the quiet, steady way that mattered. There was always a pot of tea on the stove, a spare blanket on the couch, and a light left on by the front door, just in case Maya came by after dark. One rainy Tuesday, Maya showed up soaked, her backpack dripping onto the marble floor. Without a word, Eleanor handed her a thick towel, turned up the heat and made hot chocolate with real marshmallows, the kind Maya used to beg for as a kid. "You didn't have to come in this weather," Eleanor said, handing her a mug. "I wanted to," Maya replied, wrapping her hands around the warmth. "I had a rough day." Eleanor didn't ask for details right away. She just sat beside her, letting the silence do the work. After a while, Maya told her about a classmate who'd made a snide comment about her scholarship. about how sometimes she felt like she didn't belong in college, like she was just pretending. Eleanor listened, then said, "You belong everywhere you show up with your whole heart." "That's more than most people can say." Maya smiled. It wasn't a grand speech, but it was exactly what she needed. As the weeks passed, they began to learn each other, not just the big things, but the small ones too. Eleanor learned that Maya took her coffee black, hated the sound of chewing, and always hummed when she was nervous. Maya learned that Eleanor cried during old black and white movies, kept peppermints in every pocket, and secretly loved dancing when she thought no one was watching. One evening, while cleaning out a closet, Maya found a box labeled Amelia High School. Inside were report cards, concert tickets, a dried corsage, and a mix CD titled Songs for When I Miss Home. Maya popped it into Eleanor's old stereo. The first song was a soft folk tune about stars and second chances. Eleanor stood in the doorway, eyes closed, swaying slightly. "Did she make this for you?" Maya asked. "No," Eleanor said, opening her eyes. "She made it for herself. But she left it here the last time she visited. I think she hoped I'd listen to it one day." Maya pressed play again. This time they sat on the floor together, shoulders touching, listening to the voice of a young woman who never got to grow old. It wasn't all easy. There were moments of awkwardness, of misunderstanding. Once Eleanor offered to pay Maya's tuition in full. Maya froze. "I can't accept that," she said firmly. Eleanor looked hurt. "Why not?" "It's just money." "It's not just money to me," Maya replied. "I've worked hard for every credit I've earned. If you pay it all, it'll feel like I didn't really do it myself." Eleanor was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry. I was trying to fix something I can't fix. But you can help in other ways," Maya said gently, "like believing in me, like showing up." So instead of paying the bill, Eleanor started volunteering at Maya's campus career center, quietly, without fanfare, offering mentorship to first-generation students. She never mentioned Maya. She just showed up, listened, and shared what she could. Maya noticed, and she was proud. Another time, Maya brought up the idea of meeting other family members, Eleanor's late husband's relatives, distant cousins, board members who'd known Amelia. Eleanor hesitated. "I don't want you to feel like a spectacle," she said. "Some of them, they'll see you as a story, not a person." "I know," Maya said, "but I also don't want to hide. If we're really family, then I should be able to walk into a room and say, 'This is my grandmother,' and mean it." Eleanor thought about it. Then she agreed. They started small, a quiet lunch with Eleanor's oldest friend, a retired judge who'd known Amelia as a baby. The woman took one look at Maya, teared up, and said, "You have her laugh, exactly." After that, they invited a few more people, trusted friends, longtime staff who'd worked for the family for decades. Each time, Maya held her head high. She didn't try to impress. She just was herself, and slowly the whispers turned to warmth. One Saturday morning, Maya arrived to find Eleanor sitting at the kitchen table with stacks of papers and a worried frown. "What's all this?" Maya asked, pouring herself coffee. "Paperwork," Eleanor sighed. "Wills, trusts, estate plans. I've been putting it off, but I need to update everything, to include you." Maya sat down slowly. "Eleanor, I don't want your money." "I know," Eleanor said firmly, "but I want you protected. I want you to have choices. That's not about greed, it's about love." She explained that she wasn't leaving Maya a fortune to live off of, but setting up a trust that would cover her education, help her buy a home someday, and support any future children she might have. "It's not a handout," Eleanor said. "It's a foundation, so you can build the life you dream of, without fear." Maya thought about her adoptive mom, who'd worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. She thought about all the kids she knew in foster care who aged out with nothing. No safety net, no backup plan. "Okay," she said finally. "But only if part of it goes to helping kids like me. The ones who don't have anyone." Eleanor's eyes softened. That was always the plan. They spent the afternoon working with a lawyer who came to the apartment. Maya asked questions, pushed back on things that felt too much, and insisted on clauses that supported youth programs in Atlanta. By the end, it wasn't just a legal document, it was a promise. Later, over takeout dumplings, Eleanor said, "You're going to change the world, you know that?" Maya laughed. "I just want to help a few people feel seen." "That's how you change the world," Eleanor replied. As spring turned to summer, Maya's final semester approached. She was accepted into a graduate program for social work, one of the best in the country. She was thrilled and terrified. "I don't know if I can afford it," she admitted one night, staring at the acceptance letter. Eleanor didn't say a word. She just reached into her desk drawer and handed Maya an envelope. Inside was a letter from the university's financial aid office. Her full tuition covered, plus a living stipend. "Fully funded, how?" Maya whispered. "I didn't pay for it," Eleanor said. "I donated to the scholarship fund years ago, anonymous, no strings. Turns out, the committee chose you on your own merit. I had nothing to do with it." Maya stared at her, stunned. "Well," Eleanor added with a small smile, "maybe I whispered your name once or twice." Maya threw her arms around her. "Thank you." "No," Eleanor said, holding her tight. "Thank you for giving me a reason to believe in the future again." One warm evening, they sat on the balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and pink. The city hummed below them, alive and endless. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if we'd found each other sooner?" Maya asked. "Every day," Eleanor said. "But I've learned something. Grief for the time we lost is real. But it shouldn't steal the time we still have," Maya nodded. She'd been thinking the same thing. "I used to think family was something you were born into," she said. "Now I know it's something you choose." Over and over, Eleanor reached for her hand. "And I choose you. Every single day." They didn't need grand declarations. They had something better: trust, patience, shared silence, laughter over burnt cookies, late-night talks about dreams and fears. The way Eleanor saved the last piece of pie for Maya. The way Maya always brought her favorite flowers when she visited. One afternoon, while walking through the park, Maya saw a little girl crying near the swings. Her mom was on the phone, distracted. Without thinking, Maya knelt down and asked if she was okay. The girl sniffled and said she'd lost her shoe. Maya helped her find it, tied the laces, and walked her back to her mom. As they turned to leave, Eleanor watched her with quiet pride. "You're already doing it," she said softly. "Doing what?" "Being the person Amelia hoped you'd be." Maya didn't say anything. She just slipped her hand into Eleanor's as they walked home. Back at the apartment, Maya found an old photo on the fridge, one Eleanor had taken of her studying at the kitchen table, sunlight in her hair. On the back, in Eleanor's neat handwriting, it said, "My granddaughter. My second chance." Maya pinned it next to her own photo of her adoptive mom. Two mothers, one heart. That night, as she lay in the guest room, the one Eleanor had quietly redecorated with books and soft blankets, Maya realized something. She wasn't just healing the past. She was building a future, and for the first time in her life, she didn't have to build it alone. Outside, the city slept. Inside, two hearts beat in quiet rhythm, grandmother and granddaughter, bound not just by blood but by choice, by courage, and by a love that refused to let go, even after 20 years of silence. The morning of the groundbreaking ceremony was bright and clear, the kind of autumn day that feels like a promise. Maya stood at the edge of an empty lot in Atlanta, her hands tucked into the pockets of a navy blazer she'd bought just for the occasion. Around her, workers moved with purpose, unrolling blueprints, setting up chairs, testing microphones. Banners fluttered in the breeze. Winthrop Youth and Community Center, building hope one life at a time. She took a deep breath. This place, this dream, had started as a conversation over tea 2 years ago. Back then, she'd told Eleanor about the gaps she'd seen in the system. Kids aging out of foster care with no support, no safe space, no one to believe in them. What if there was a place, she'd said, where they could come after school, get help with homework, talk to someone who gets it, learn job skills, just feel like they belong? Eleanor hadn't said yes right away. She'd asked questions about sustainability, staffing, real impact. But a week later, she'd handed Maya a folder. "Let's build it," she'd said. Together. And they had. Now, as Maya watched a crew install the foundation stone, she felt a lump rise in her throat. This wasn't just a building. It was a promise kept. To her younger self, to Amelia, to every kid who'd ever felt invisible. A car pulled up quietly at the curb. Eleanor stepped out, leaning lightly on a sleek cane she'd only started using that year. Her hair was whiter now, her steps slower, but her eyes were as sharp and warm as ever. She wore a simple cream suit and the same pearl earrings she'd worn the night they met. You're early, Maya said, walking over to greet her. Couldn't sleep, Eleanor replied, linking her arm through Maya's. Too excited. They walked the perimeter of the site together, just like they had during the planning phase. Back then, Maya had sketched ideas on napkins. Eleanor had connected her with architects who listened. They'd argued over window placements. More natural light, Maya insisted. Debated whether the counseling rooms should be near the entrance, so it doesn't feel hidden, Eleanor agreed, and spent hours choosing paint colors that felt calm but hopeful. Now, standing where the main lobby would be, Eleanor squeezed Maya's arm. You did this. We did this, Maya corrected gently. Eleanor smiled. You led. I followed. There's a difference. Inside the tent where guests would gather, Maya adjusted the display table. Photos lined the boards, Amelia as a teenager, Maya as a child with her adoptive mom, sketches of the center, quotes from future programs. In the center sat the locket, now mounted in a small glass case with a note. This locket brought us together. Now we build for others. Eleanor stopped in front of it, her fingers hovering near the glass. It's still hard to believe, she murmured, that something so small could change everything. It wasn't the locket, Maya said softly. It was you. You chose to see me. Eleanor turned to her, eyes glistening. And you chose to let me in. Guests began to arrive, city officials, community leaders, former foster youth Maya had worked with, teachers, donors. Many had heard the story. Some had tears in their eyes before the speeches even began. When it was time, Maya stood at the podium, her heart pounding. She looked out at the crowd, then found Eleanor in the front row nodding encouragingly. I grew up not knowing where I came from, Maya began, her voice steady. I spent years wondering if I mattered. But then I met someone who showed me that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up. It's about seeing someone's pain and saying, I'm here. She paused. This center isn't about fixing kids. It's about believing in them, giving them space to grow, to stumble, to become who they're meant to be. Because every child deserves that chance, applause rose, warm and genuine. Eleanor clapped the hardest, her face glowing with pride. After the speeches, they gathered for the ceremonial shoveling of dirt. Maya and Eleanor stood side by side, each holding a gleaming silver shovel. As they dug into the earth together, their hands brushed just for a second, but it was enough. A silent understanding passed between them. This was more than a project. It was a legacy. Later, as the crowd mingled over lemonade and cookies, a young woman approached Maya. She looked to be about 18, with wary eyes and a worn backpack slung over one shoulder. Are you the one who designed this place? She asked. Maya nodded. I helped. The girl hesitated, then said, I aged out of foster care last month. Got nowhere to go, they said this center might help. Maya's heart ached. She knew that look, the mix of hope and fear, the quiet plea for someone to care. Come with me, she said gently. She walked the girl over to a table where a kind-faced woman in a program director badge was handing out brochures. This is Ms. Rivera, Maya said. She's going to help you, and you're not alone anymore. As the girl sat down with Ms. Rivera, Maya watched her shoulders relax, just a little. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. Eleanor appeared beside her, holding 2 cups of tea. You're already changing lives, she said. Just paying forward what you gave me, Maya replied. They sat on a bench under a large oak tree, watching the sun dip lower in the sky. The noise of the event faded into the background. I've been thinking, Eleanor said after a while, about what comes next. Maya turned to her. For the center? For us, Eleanor said. I know you'll move away for grad school soon. And that's good. You should. But I want you to know this isn't goodbye. It's just a new chapter. Maya reached for her hand. I'll come back every chance I get. And you'll visit me, right? Even if it's just to complain about the weather. Eleanor laughed, a real full laugh that made her eyes crinkle. Deal. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching kids from the neighborhood peek through the fence, curious about the new building going up. You know, Maya said softly, I used to think my story started when my mom adopted me. Then I thought it started the night we met. But now I see it started with Amelia. With her choosing to keep me, to name me, to believe I was worth loving even when the world felt dark. Eleanor nodded. And it continues with you, every time you choose kindness. Every time you stand up for someone who can't stand up for themselves. Maya smiled. Then I guess our story's not over yet. No, Eleanor said, squeezing her hand. It's just getting good. As the evening settled in, they drove back to the hotel where Eleanor was staying. Maya carried her bag upstairs, helped her settle into the room, fluffed her pillows like she always did now. Before she left, Eleanor reached into her purse and handed her a small velvet box. Maya opened it. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, simple but elegant, with 2 tiny charms, a locket and an open book. I had it made, Eleanor said. The locket for where you came from. The book for where you're going. Maya fastened it around her wrist. It felt light but full of meaning. Thank you, she whispered. Eleanor patted the bed beside her. Stay a while? Maya sat down. They didn't talk much after that. Just sat together, watching the city lights blink on one by one outside the window. 2 generations, bound by loss, healed by love, building something beautiful from the broken pieces. The next morning, Maya walked Eleanor to her car. The driver held the door open, but Eleanor lingered. You'll call when you get back? She asked. First thing, Maya promised. Eleanor pulled her into a hug. Long, tight, full of everything words couldn't say. As the car pulled away, Maya stood on the sidewalk, the bracelet glinting in the morning sun. She touched the locket at her throat, then looked up at the empty lot where the center would rise. She wasn't the lost girl in a thrift store necklace anymore. She was Maya, daughter of Amelia, granddaughter of Eleanor, future social worker, builder of safe spaces. She carried her past with her, not as a weight but as a compass. Back in